Hey there, I'm going to do a vlog in December because I think it's going to be an interesting month for me. To begin with, I'm reading this, Celestial Bodies, about a fourth of the way through. It's written by Jokha Alharthi, an Omani writer, and it's about an Omani family, or some different families, which are all interconnected, as you can see in this beautiful diagram, which I keep flipping back to. And the chapters are like, they've got a name and then they follow that character, and sometimes they don't really follow that character, like they're just sort of like built around that character, which I love. And each chapter is like, around 5 pages. It's like a really nice short length and does a lot in those 5 pages, and it's just brilliant so far. I'm loving the way that like the characters move and like are all like interwoven, and you get this real sense of their connections and stuff. And I don't know why they're so engaging, because like each character only gets such a small amount of space, but like it's sort of the dynamics of this family rather than the individuals, the way that the connections between them. And like the name Celestial Bodies makes sense because it feels like a constellation of like different people and experiences strung together. I talked recently in some video about stream of consciousness and how I'm not a fan when it's a whole book of stream of consciousness, but this one has like stream of consciousness-y bits to it, or like little chapters, which are brilliant, and they thread things together great, and then it kind of goes back into a more standard type of narration. And like for me, that's perfect. Everything just moves and flows in a way which I find so like engaging to read. Oh, and like I said, like it seems like a constellation, but the actual title, I think, is not. The original title was not. What was it? It was Sayyidat al-Qamar, which means Ladies of the Moon. So it actually doesn't have that constellation image in the original title, but and Ladies of the Moon, yeah, it kind of refocuses your attention on it. There's definitely a lot of like more focus on women, but the male characters also appear quite a lot and get a lot of say. Maybe it's about 50-50 so far. So yeah, really enjoying the writing in this so far, and hopefully it will. I'll maintain that level of enthusiasm all the way through. So yeah, I'm gonna go and heat up my coffee in the microwave and then continue reading this book. Hey there, so I just finished posting some late night Christmas cards, and now I'm going home, talking quietly because it's late at night. And yeah, I finished Celestial Bodies. It was amazing. It did so much more than I thought it would. The way that it linked all these different characters and families and sort of gave a sense of like the history of this country without being preachy or didactic or anything, but like I feel like I know a little bit about Oman now, whereas I didn't before. So that's really cool, and it was just written so well. Like that was really a side thing, like just the skill and the structure, and like I want to talk about it more later, I guess. But there were so many things. I'm talking a bit louder now because we're past the houses. We're in a little park. My glasses are super foggy and I look silly, but I'm not going to get a chance to talk about this book again until I am in a different part of the world. So I thought I would make the most of this. but yeah, I'll stand underneath the light. So basically, yeah, it was really good, and I absolutely loved the way that even though most of the chapters were only like 2 pages to 5 pages, they all felt really self-contained, like they got a point across, they communicated their own little story, and I really liked that. Yeah, there was just, it's a definite 5-star book for me. I'm not sure if it'd be a new favorite or not. I need to like let it sink in a bit. But yeah, Jokha Alharthi, definitely a brilliant writer, and yeah, it just felt so well crafted. Next book I'm gonna read is, I haven't decided yet. I guess I'll show it when I'm on the plane. I'm thinking No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, because it's really short and I'm borrowing it from a friend, and it's just a little classic that I feel like I could get through quickly, maybe like on the whole plane flight. We'll see. It's a long plane flight I'm taking tomorrow. Oh god, airplanes, not looking forward to that, but we'll see how the world is now. But yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye. Okay, so here I am. No, that was silly. I'm gonna put that down. Here I am in the UK. This is the room that I spent like my teenage years in. So that's pretty wild. It's kind of, yeah, odd being back, but really nice to see the family and so on. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the Celestial Bodies. Right, that's it. It seems like a really long time ago that I read that book. I finished it like right before the library closed, before I took my flight. So I literally like kind of had to get through the last pages and then like run until I got to the library just like minutes before closing time to get it back in. But it was damn worth it. I would have liked to take it slower because it's a book where the chapters, I don't know, like I think I mentioned everything was so well balanced that those birds are really nice, huh? Yeah, sorry, the flora and fauna are different in different countries, right? So it's always nice. Okay, ran out of battery. Gonna try that again. What was I saying? Yeah. Celestial Bodies, really short chapters, but each one had a beginning, a middle, and end, and had its own like kind of thing that it explored with a certain character. So you kind of I wanted to read one and then let it sit and then like think about it. And it might be also because I'm a bit slow sometimes. I think like there was a really important thing in the first chapter about the reason that Maya names her child London, and like I didn't really get the reason. I think I was like, huh, that's a weird name, but like whatever. And then like chapters later, I thought, I think I missed something, and I went back and I read the first chapter again, and I was like, oh, that's why she called him London. It's because the person she loved went and studied in London, and so it's like her own way of sort of resisting the patriarchal norms and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, it was actually like changed my appreciation a lot of that character and that part of the book, which is really important. So I think like it's a book that deserves a lot of time, despite the fact that it's quite small and slim. It's also a book about like the clash between traditions and modernity, and it follows, you know, like this period of rapid change in Oman. And it was really interesting seeing how like the different generations embody kind of like more modern approaches, and like technology is also a big part of that. And also characters who are, you know, it's not like the young are wild and the old are like, oh, like traditional. It's like the characters develop as time goes on, which is really interesting to read. It's not a book where you fall in love with the characters, I think, because it presents them as like points on a huge web, and that, you know, like the thing that you connect with is the web rather than the individuals. So if you really need a book where you totally like kind of vibe with the character, or like you know, like you're really in the head of a character, then despite the fact that this book has a lot of interiority, especially for like the female characters, I think this is more like kind of an expansive thing, right? And the fact that she can make it feel so expansive while the fact that the actual book is quite small is incredibly impressive, I think. So yeah, I got distracted though. I was talking about the themes like tradition and modernity, and like like the airplane, right? Abdallah, there's this one character, Abdallah, who gets a lot like alternating chapters all the way through, which makes it seem like he might be the main character, but he's not really, because his chapters are all about memory and thinking about other people in his life. And this happens while he's on an airplane. So, you know, the airplane on the one hand is this, you know, like kind of a strange thing that's taking him around the world, and it's moving him through space, and at the same time, you know, like he's moving through his memories. So even though there's this contrast, this is so interesting, right? Like this airplane that, you know, represents modernity and represents like crossing international boundaries and connectedness. But while he's in the airplane, all he can do is like reflect on the past and fall into memories of his like kind of very narrow patriarchal culture of a particular village in Oman, and like his father, and this trauma that he has with his father, where his father punished him by dangling him upside down in a well, and that like keeps on coming back, that image. And also then his mother, and like the circumstances regarding her death is something that like as he falls through his memories, we start to get more and more information and clues to what actually killed her. And so there's a kind of like a suspense, like a mystery suspense thing going all the way through the novel, and it's just done so well. And it reminded me actually of Flights, which I talked about earlier on this channel. In that book, I thought it was quite frustrating the way that there was this contrast between sort of set and enclosed and defined identities, and then the sort of the potential of flight and airplane travel and moving around through airports, and the way that kind of erases boundaries. Like that seems like a really interesting contrast, but in Flights it kind of felt like they just didn't gel. It was like, it felt almost hypocritical, the way that she would describe on the one hand being nomadic and free and the world's boundaries disintegrating, and then on the other hand having these stories which were so set in a certain place and time, and with like a certain identity and political worldview. In this case, like a pretty like kind of liberal middle class white person worldview. And yet in this book, Celestial Bodies, which I'm supposed to be talking about, the airplane thing worked as a beautiful like kind of contrast, and that like him flying, and we've got modernity, technology, and like international connectedness and all that, but at the same time he's falling through his memories through like into, you know, rigid communal familial structures that are like kind of still defining who he is as a person. And that kind of lostness of the novel was brilliant. And I thought it was like, yeah, it reminded me of what annoyed me about Flights, because I felt like a similar thing was done here, but really well. I also mentioned before, I don't really gel with stream of consciousness stuff if it's a full novel, I think. But at the same time as he's falling backwards in time through his memory, there's an there's alternating chapters, and in the other plot, we see the past moving forward. So there's this forward trajectory As he's falling backwards, the story is moving forwards, but like from the past. So you've got this really cool kind of like double thing going on where the plot is moving and like you're getting more information both from the past stuff as he remembers and from the actual like forward motion. This is really hard to explain. You just got to read it. Just read the book. It's really good. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. Next one was on the airplane. I read from start to finish No Longer Human, or Ningen Shikaku, which is like disqualified human. This is a Japanese classic by Osamu Dazai. It's about a really sad guy. He dislikes people, he's misanthropic, and he doesn't understand people, and he's always like kind of smiling and making people laugh and playing a clown, and just like faking it all the time, so that actually he's very likable and everyone gets on with him, but deep down in his like interior thoughts, which we are privy to in his notebooks, it's structured like a series of notebooks. We see that actually he hates everyone and everything, and he wishes that the world would just be engulfed in flames, basically. So it's not a fun read. I quite like books about miserable loser loner guys who've got a superiority inferiority complex kind of thing, right? Because they're fun, they're ridiculous, they're like relatable, and often like there's empathy as well. Like you see why they're like that, and you're kind of rooting for them a bit, and on some level, right? In this one though, there was nothing I felt like really that made me want to root for this guy. Like he's constantly just like manipulating everyone around him. He joins the communists. He ends up becoming like the leader of one of the communist groups, and he doesn't really like care about anyone or anything. He's just doing it like to have something to do, basically. And so everything is sort of like a hollow shell, and everything is cynical and horrible all the way through. The writing wasn't enough to make me like love this book, because the character was so unpleasant, and the writing also was, it was good. It was, it's a classic for a reason, but there were some bits that bugged me, like those damn one-line paragraphs. A whole line gets its own paragraph, and why? It really bothers me. It's a real pet peeve of mine. Unless there's like a super good reason to do that, to have a line as a paragraph, then why do people have to do it? So there was a lot of things in the little bits in the writing that kind of bugged me as well. And I can kind of see why it's a classic, because I kind of think he's meant to like represent an aspect of Japan, and there's this one scene where he vomits blood into the snow, and it's like, oh, that's the Hinomaru, like the Japanese flag, the rising sun. And I like that scene, I like that image, I thought it was really good, but it wasn't like all the way through. It wasn't like, it didn't feel like an allegory, it just felt like a jerk, like for most of it, I didn't feel like it was saying anything really profound, and maybe I missed a lot. Maybe there was some profound stuff, but it's not my favorite Japanese classic by a long shot. And then, since I got here, in this house, there are, as you can see, loads of books, and it's kind of overwhelming. And I've just been walking from room to room and bookshelf to bookshelf, and like looking at all the things, some old, some new. I mean, things that have appeared since I was last here. So it's and things also from my childhood, which I didn't know still existed, or. Yeah, it's just really interesting to go and through them. And one thing that's new that I was really surprised and happy to see was this one. I don't know if you can see it because of the glare, actually. Maybe if I hold it up a bit closer. Ali Smith, Girl Meets Boy. This was on my TBR because it has been there ever since I read her retelling of Antigone, which is, her, Ali Smith, doing a Greek myth only like in a children's book way. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved it. There's a myth in Ovid's Metamorphoses, one of my favorite books of all time, which really stood out at me. The myth of Iphis, I think his name is, there's two myths basically where there's a boy who turns into a girl, or a girl who turns into a boy. And in Iphis there was this is a retelling of, I should have said. In that one, like, it's a brilliant like exploration like of like homosexual love and trying to navigate between identities, and like queer identities especially, and it seems super modern, and the ending is really like cheesy but happy. So like it kind of felt like, wow, that's a really happy ending, and Greek myth is really unusual, right? I wish it wasn't so like corny and cheesy. Just a god appears and says, boom, everything is good now, you can be happy. So and also there's some like problematic patriarchal stuff in it, like, but that's to be expected. It was written in the year like 0 or something, so anyway, so an Ali Smith retelling of that particular myth, which stuck in my mind as something which like, oh damn man, that could be really interesting if retold in a modern context, and then seeing that it actually was done made me think I absolutely have to get my hands on this one day. And lo and behold, here it was in the house. So I'm really excited to read it, and I will read it, and then I will get back to you. So, see you soon.
Should not mix with anyone outside their own household at Christmas.
Hey there, so yeah, I'm in a new room, which means I can get a little backdrop here. I'm actually sleeping on a mattress now because my dad got a little cold, and there's been a lot of COVID going around his school where he works, so yeah, we just thought it'd be better he slept in that room by himself, and now I'm here in this little room, which we used to call the cupboard under the stairs, despite the fact that it's on the second floor, but you know, it's got that kind of cupboard under the stairs vibe to it. It's cozy, and lots of books here. But anyway, here I am to talk to you about this book, which I just finished, Girl Meets Boy. It was, it did what it said on the tin, and it talked about and retold the myth of Iphis from Ovid, which is like a myth I really love. I love how joyous it is while dealing with lots of queer kind of content and queer conundrums and identity stuff. And so I really wanted to see what a modern retelling would look like, and this did that. So there's two sisters, Anthea and Imogen, and Anthea is kind of like artsy and questioning her identity and a bit sad, and Imogen is homophobic, and she's the older sister and sort of had to keep the family together after the parents left or died, I don't remember, but anyway, she's, you know, kind of, she's not woke, and to be honest, like her chapters, because the chapters alternate between the two sisters, and the Imogen chapters were just really not fun for me to read. It felt like kind of cliches, like the cliches of people who are a little bit more conservative and, you know, maybe trying to come to terms with things like people being gay and so on, but also, you know, like yeah, being really resistant to that. There's loads of characters I've read whose values don't align with my own, obviously, and yet I find them really compelling to read, but I didn't feel that. I just felt like Imogen's character was super flat, so that didn't help given that she takes up almost 50% of the book. On the other hand, Anthea's chapters were super interesting. There's some really beautiful language, and you know, the Metamorphosis is one of my absolute favorite books, if not my absolute favorite book, and I feel like, as well as just taking the myth of Iphis, the actual, like, the writing style of Ovid was used a lot, or drawn on a lot, because there's lots of transformations. Most notably, there's a sex scene in this, which is like one of the best sex scenes I've ever read, and that's like, I think it's very difficult to depict sex in films and books and so on, without it being a bit silly or over the top or whatever. It's just a very difficult thing to depict, I think, and to depict well, anyways. And I think that, like, she really did a good job with this. It's like they used this metamorphosis theme of, like, you know, bodies transforming into different animals and beings and lights and sounds, and it's just done really well. And it's got that sort of joyous feeling as well, which is in Ovid and which is in specifically the myth of Iphis. And also there's a strong emphasis on water as a commodity, as a sort of corporate commodity, and that's kind of like, I don't know why that, but that's like a big part of the book. The two sisters work for this company called Pure, which is a water bottling company, but like it's sort of a conglomerate. I think it's meant to have like its fingers in lots of different industries as well as bottled water. And that also for me, I was like, oh, this is a different myth, because in Ovid there's a myth of Leto and the frogs. Leto goes and asks for water, but the men say no because it's on private land, and she's like, but water is of the earth, and it's like it's a natural resource and stuff. So that's like, of all the myths in Ovid, I feel like both the myth of Leto and the myth of Iphis have got like really strong resonances with our own current like politics, you know what I mean? Because oh, hang on a sec. You might hear like random shouts and singing in the background. That is just normal family life here. So it's got like both the myth of Iphis and the myth of Leto and the frogs, and I think that's like interesting because both of those seem really relevant to today, like politically, given that the Metamorphosis was written around the year 0. So it's really cool that she got those myths and updated them. Although the one with Leto, like, I'm not sure if it was even intentional, because she doesn't mention the source material like she does with Iphis. And in the back she talks about the things that inspired her to write this, and that isn't mentioned. So yeah, I'm not sure if maybe that's just me reading into it or something, or it's an invisible influence. I don't know, but I like that. But it was it didn't really come together, right? Like the theme of water and gender transformation, it feels like there's a lot of room for like they could have overlapped them somehow, but it felt pretty jumbled and like it didn't really come together. And yeah, overall, I mean, I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but overall it was such a mixed bag. There were so many like beautiful bits of writing and like kind of interesting references to other bits of writing. That's something I've heard that Ali Smith does a lot, like drop in little references, and I'm sure like some of them went over my head, but there were plenty of other ones which were kind of interesting, but I'm not sure how much they helped the story along, you know what I mean? It was just like, oh right, rather than like laugh out loud funny or anything like that. I'm not sure. It's kind of made me not so enthusiastic about continuing with Ali Smith, unfortunately, even though I know this isn't one of her famous books, and I do want to read another book by her, but it was kind of like, had a nice like refreshing vibe to it. But I don't think my life is any better for having read it. It's written in 2007, and I do feel like it has aged a bit, like gender and like gay rights and stuff like that have made big progress in the last 10 years. So I feel like it's aged a little bit. The combination of like contemporary politics and Ovidian mythology, I feel, is something which I should really love, and it did. I'm glad it exists, I guess, but it didn't really deliver on that front for me. So yeah, Ali Smith. Next one I'm going to read is this. This is actually a birthday present. I mean, like, when it was my birthday, my parents gave me some money, and then they put it into my bank account, and I decided I'll get myself a book. And I decided I want to get this book. So there's this channel on YouTube I follow, Biblio Obscura, I think. And yeah, she's great. She talks about all sorts of translated literature, especially like translated genre things like sci-fi, thrillers, horror, mystery. And this isn't translated. Ghost Girls. I should have said the title. Yeah, Ghost Girls by Cath Ferla. This is an Australian book. It was highly recommended by the booktuber, who I think is called Cath. Premises: there is a teacher in Australia who teaches English to foreign language students who come over from Asia and like practice, I guess, over the summer or whatever. It's like really like common thing. I taught like that before as well in the UK. And one of the students, she gets a call from the police saying one of her students has killed herself or is dead. I'm not sure if it's homicide or whatever. But yeah, she's asked to come and identify the body based on the ID that the person's carrying. And, she's really sad about it. And she goes in and she looks and she sees the body is a totally different person. So then, like, what happens is they discover a sort of visa scam for people coming in and getting others to coming in as students and then getting other people to do the necessary courses that they have to do, while the person who came in on the student visa takes on another identity and ends up in the sex trade. So like that premise was fascinating to me because I'm really interested in immigration and like the exploitation of immigrants and loopholes and so on in immigration law. And the vulnerability of immigrants, and also like Sichuanese food, because like I heard that there's some great descriptions of Sichuanese food in this. So yeah, it just sort of ticked all my boxes when I heard about it. It was just such a wow, I need to read that book moment, which I'm sure like a lot of people get on BookTube. But I had it so strongly that I thought I just have to get my hands on this. And the thing was, it was actually really difficult to do because there were I couldn't find online sellers for it, and the only ones that I could find were coming from Australia, which Japan wasn't accepting packages from, and I think America as well. Also not getting packages, I think, because of the pandemic and stuff. Or maybe I don't remember about America, but anyway, yeah. In the end, I finally found it on eBay, which is a site which I used to use so much when I was like a young teen, and like I didn't know it still existed. But amazingly, it does exist. eBay still exists, and they had this really expensive from a seller in New Zealand. So I had to like make sure, you're not going to send this via Australia, right? Because otherwise I won't get it. It arrived like at the beginning of December. So, my birthday is in September. So it took a long time for me to finally get this book. Hooray! All the way from New Zealand. One book. Surprisingly difficult to open. Ta-da! Come to me. My birthday present. And then I brought it with me to the UK. So finally I'm going to be able to read it. Really excited for that, and I'll let you know how it goes.
That the new variant of the coronavirus is easier to transmit, much more so than other variants, but there are many unanswered questions.
I think we were told we couldn't have our cake and eat it, and that kind of thing. I'm not going to claim that this is a cakeist treaty, Robert, but but it is. I believe what the country needs.
Bransoletka. Elegancka bransoletka.
You're recording.
Things to put me down.
Fish, veg,
We're going to start with fish, yeah?
Okay, got it? There.
potatoes.
Just finished Ghost Girls by Cath Ferla, and it did everything that I wanted it to. I had a really good time with this. So I think I got the premise wrong when I talked about it before, but it's basically, the basics are there. It's an English teacher, sort of detective person. One of her students is involved in visa fraud, and it's a thriller, and it has lots of Sichuanese food throughout, and it's really good. Yeah, the writing style was like really like food journalism for a lot of it, which was a great thing. I thought, like, there's great like mouth-watering descriptions of food from the south of China and like other parts of China as well throughout. It gave it sort of like a kind of unique identity, I think, and like a distinctness, as well as being like a thriller about student visa fraud, which I think is probably unusual, and for me personally was really interesting, because like I've been an international student, or like for most of my life. Like I joined an international school when I was 4 years old, and there's only been like a few years where I wasn't involved in an international school. I've taught international students as well, like the teacher in this book, so it's sort of like it's been a big part of my life. And I think that the sort of multicultural mini bubble world of international students is captured really well in this. And the way that Cath Ferla connects those sort of like ordinary people and moments, and sort of like a small international bubble to like a thriller plot, and also to like really serious real things like sex trafficking. Like that's like the visa fraud thing is connected to sex trafficking, which is what makes this book pretty dark and gritty. It gives you a sense of like kind of the back streets of Chinatown in Sydney. Hello. And just one of the things which is so good about this is the way it connects everyday people quite plausibly to like horrific events. Like the sex industry is this big chain, and you see different characters, like a international student meeting a guy at a party and like kind of being convinced to consensually become a sex worker, and then like how like that leads to other situations which are far more threatening and scary, and like how people who are already vulnerable get made more vulnerable. And also like other parts of the chain, like you see the abusers, you also see just a normal guy who's like sitting at home sipping like tea, and it says like he's all cozy and curled up and listening to the rain outside and waiting for his porn DVDs to arrive in the mail. And like that sort of scene of like middle class suburban comfort and luxury, like juxtaposed with the ones before and around it, where we see how these videos that he's ordering are made, is really like powerful. I thought it shows how like the sort of terrible violence that happens because of xenophobia and exploitation of immigrants is made possible basically by just ordinary people. And I thought that was an incredible thing to do in also what's just a kind of fun, entertaining detective thriller thing. So yeah, I'm really impressed by that. It's not like, you know, a masterpiece. There's loads of cliches and characters that just seem to scream red herring all the way through, and that was kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But those bits never really got in the way. Oh, and the main character was kind of annoying just because she's an English teacher, but she's also kind of a private investigator, and like I didn't really care about her because she was the least realistic of all the characters. But yeah, the author Cath Ferla obviously knows what she's talking about. She is an English teacher, I think. It says somewhere in the beginning, and she like knows a lot about China and Chinese food, and also like little details about like the visa system, like how there'd be students who come to Australia and their visa demands that they spend a certain amount of hours in English schools, but those English schools also don't give them those classes because they can't afford to pay their teachers to do that much work. So they end up with these sort of nothing classes where the teachers just have to babysit the students, and neither the teachers nor the students want to be there, but it's sort of like to get around the visa regulation. So little like bureaucratic details like that I thought just really worked to make it very convincing and plausible. And I feel that like for people who aren't international students or who don't know so much about that, then there still will be a lot to relate to in this book, because, you know, I think that everybody is familiar with feelings of foreignness or of being a foreigner in some place or another, even in your own country. Lots of people don't have their own country, so, you know, there's just so much to recommend this to. And also, I think for a lot of people who don't experience foreignness, then this would also like kind of be eye-opening and maybe very informative and good to read. So yeah, high recommendation if you want a good thriller, or if you want something that goes over any of the things that I've talked about, including of course Sichuanese food, which is delicious. Okay, so that's the end of the vlog. It's been fun. I'm still in the UK, it's the new year, and I'm looking forward to making a bunch more videos this year. I've got lots of ideas for what I'm going to be doing, and I look forward to not seeing you because you are seeing me, but you know what I mean, like doing videos and stuff like that. So I'll see you next time. Bye bye.